Welcome to another Reddit video. This story is called Wife Caught Cheating After 18 Years. I have never been to one of these forums, and I don't know if this will even help me, but I just recently found out that my wife of 18 years was cheating on me with one of her wealthy clients. She is an attorney. My wife went through great lengths to try and hide her affair, but she made one crucial mistake. She forgot to delete the destinations in the car. When using the navigation system, they told me where she went and I took screenshots of all of it. And I had another gadget in her car. Once I found out, I didn't say anything. I wanted to get more concrete proof. I am a trust fund baby. So, I have access to money and I hired a very good private investigator. I put the private investigator on a retainer. I was sort of pay him as he gathered the evidence I needed. I had to be very careful because if my wife found out I was onto her, she would have become even more secretive and I may have never found out the truth. So, as the weeks went by, I never said anything to her. My demeanor didn't change. I acted like everything was normal. But all the while, I was getting more and more evidence of her affair. To top this all off, she is a divorce attorney. So, she knows all the tricks in the book to try and hide assets and to make sure she comes out on top in a divorce. But little does she know, I have been planning my own little surprise for her. My private investigator was really good at getting surveillance footage of my wife cheating with this client of hers. He's very wealthy and he has a lot of power. But what my wife didn't know is that I have been secretly recording her conversations with this man for a few weeks. I placed a very tiny voice-activated recorder in her car without her knowledge. Even though I am a trust fund baby, I was a mechanic at one time and I told her one day that I was going to clean her car and get the oil changed. That's when I placed a voice-activated recorder in her car. One of the most heartbreaking things I heard, she gave him oral in the back seat of her car. I thought to myself, I would never initiate kissing her again, never, but I still had to play dumb. Like I didn't know anything. A few more weeks went by and I had more than enough evidence to confront her with, but I wanted to wait for the right time. I was still unsure if I even wanted to confront her. I also secretly hired a moving company to come and move all of my stuff out of our house while she was at work. I didn't want any type of confrontation with her. I wanted to be long gone before she even got home from work. That day, she called and said she would be working late. When she told me that, I said, "Okay, I love you. I will see you later." After getting off the phone, I called my private investigator and told him that my wife said she was working late. My private investigator said, "Okay, I will tell her and see what she is really up to." A few hours went by and I got a call from my private investigator. He said, "Well, it seems like your wife is not working late. She is currently at a hotel with her client." I told him to stay there and get as much evidence as possible. I wanted to be 100% sure before I took any kind of action. The private investigator said, "Okay, no problem." A few hours went by. The private investigator sent me a video clip of them walking into the room with her client's hand squeezing my wife's ass. I sent the private investigator a text telling him he doesn't need to stay there any longer. That's all the evidence I needed. After that, I continued packing my things while the moving company continued moving my furniture. It wasn't much. I had made arrangements to move into one of my vacation homes that I rent out every year, which was partially furnished. At about 4 p.m., my wife calls me and says she will be home in an hour or two. I told her, okay, and hung up the phone. I told the movers we had about an hour left, and I told them the address of the vacation home. They were done about 40 minutes later. I gave them the key, and they headed to the house. I locked my old house, set the alarm, and got in my car. My movers and I get to the vacation home. When my phone rings, it's my wife. She says she wants me to meet her at our favorite restaurant. I said, "Why?" She says, "I have something to tell you." I get to the restaurant and my wife is already there. She's sitting in a booth. I sit down and she looks at me and she has this weird look on her face. She finally says, "I'm pregnant." I was in shock. I didn't know what to say. I told her, "Are you sure? It's mine." She looks at me funny and says, "Why would you say that?" I look at her, take out my phone, show her the video clip of her and her client walking into the hotel room with her client, squeezing her ass. Then I told her, "I know you are cheating on me. And I know you gave this client of yours oral in the back seat of your car. We can do this one of two ways. We can settle this out of court, or we can go to court and you will probably get demolished with all of the evidence I have." She didn't say a word for about a minute. Then she looks at me and says she will take her chances in court. All I said was, "Okay," got up and left. The following day, I conferred with a divorce attorney, showed him the evidence, and told him to start the divorce process. That same day, she must have called my phone 1,000 times. Remember the day I left her at our favorite restaurant? She went home and found that I had moved out and bombarded my phone that day as well. But I never responded to her. A few weeks later, my divorce attorney said that she was served with the divorce papers and all that's left now is the hearing. A few weeks after that, I get a call from her asking me to meet her for coffee. So I did. She asked me how I was doing and I said, "I'm doing just fine. Thank you." Then she asked me if I would consider dropping the divorce. And I said, "No." I told her, "I can't trust you anymore. After 18 years of marriage, you decide to cross the line with the client and you want me to take you back. I'm sorry, but I can't do that." She begged and pleaded with me, even offered to give up her privacy and let me have access to everything. A few weeks later, I get a call from her again, saying she wants to meet for coffee. So I met her again. This time she wanted to know if I would give her another chance. She kept saying, "Please, please, please." And I said, "Why? What benefit do I get? If I decided to give you another chance?" She looked at me with this pitiful look on her face and said, "Because I love you." I just sat there looking at her for what seemed like an eternity. Then I got up and left. A few days later, I received a package in the mail from her. It contained a box of my favorite cigars and a note that said, "I'm sorry." I thought about it for a few days and decided that I just couldn't do it. I had tears rolling down my face. I just couldn't see myself with her. She threw away 18 years for a client that she knew for only a month. I can't think or write any more at this point. I am too mentally distraught. I promise I will come back with an update on my situation. This story is called Update Wife Caught Cheating After 18 Years. Hello. I am back with a quick update. My divorce isn't final yet. My wife asked me to give her another chance. She begged and pleaded with me after I showed her proof that I knew she was cheating on me. She has since asked me multiple times, have I considered giving her another chance in my head? I said I couldn't, but I just haven't told her yet. I don't think I can trust her, but I had a funny feeling. She was still cheating. So, with my gut instinct, I called my private investigator and told him I wanted him to continue to follow her. A week goes by. He calls me and tells me he has not seen her with that client. She goes to work and goes home. He also tells me that when he follows her home, he stays for about 30 to 40 minutes to see if she leaves the house. According to him, she hasn't. Fast forward 3 weeks, and my private investigator follows my wife home, and he waited for 30 minutes. Then, out of nowhere, he sees a car drive down to the house. He's never seen this car before. It's the guy she has been cheating with. He sends me a clip of this guy walking up to the door. He knocks on the door. My wife opens the door and kisses him. After that, I sent my wife a text and told her I will not give her another chance. I will see you in divorce court. As of May 21st, 2022, I don't have a date for my divorce hearing. That's all I have for now. Thank you everyone for. The popcorn went cold in my hand, the butter a greasy film against my skin. Half an hour past the movie's start time. The silence in the living room was starting to grate. Sarah, usually a stickler for our Wednesday movie nights, was nowhere to be seen. Just when I was about to switch the TV off, the doorbell screamed through the house. I bolted up, heart hammering against my ribs. Relief washed over me as I flung the door open. Relief that quickly turned to a cold knot in my stomach. Sarah stood there, swaying slightly, a stranger in our doorway. Her eyes, usually sparkling with warmth, were glassy and distant. A cloying perfume, sweet and unfamiliar, hung thick in the air. She giggled, a sound light and bubbly, completely unlike her usual laugh. "Hey you," she slurred, her words thick on her tongue. "Movie night, right?" The knot in my stomach tightened. "Sarah, where?" My voice trailed off, the question hanging heavy in the air. "Girls' night gone wild," she declared, the giggle morphing into a loud, unfamiliar cackle that sent shivers down my spine. We, we painted the town red." Another wave of that unnerving perfume hit me, a stark contrast to her usual lavender scent. This wasn't Sarah. This wasn't the woman I knew. Fear, sharp and icy, wormed its way through me. "Who were you with?" I forced the words out, my voice low and dangerous. Her smile faltered for a second, replaced by a fleeting flicker of something. Fear? Confusion? It was gone as fast as it came. "Doesn't matter," she slurred, pushing past me and into the living room. The movie played on, the soundtrack a muffled backdrop to the turmoil within me. Sarah sank onto the couch, her laughter bubbling up again, a constant undercurrent to the tense silence that had settled between us. Who was she with? Where had she been? What had happened? The questions swirled in my head, unanswered and terrifying. I stole a glance at her, but her face was a mask, her glassy eyes staring blankly at the screen. This wasn't just a girl's night gone wild. Something was terribly wrong. My stomach lurched as I fumbled with Sarah's blouse, helping her dress for work. A flash of crimson caught my eye, a lipstick stain, bright red and brazen, nestled against the white collar. It wasn't the soft pink she usually wore, and it wasn't there yesterday. "Whoa there," I said, holding the blouse away from her. "What's this?" Sarah stiffened, her eyes flitting nervously to the mirror. "Oh, that must have gotten on when I hugged Linda goodbye this morning." Spilled her new lipstick, the klutz. Her explanation felt hollow. Linda, her ever-practical coworker, wouldn't be caught dead with lipstick that bold. But I swallowed the doubt, forcing a smile. "All right, just be careful next time." That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, cracks started appearing in our once solid routine. Late-night texts became a nightly ritual, the phone screen quickly turned down whenever I walked by. Work meetings stretched into late dinners, her explanations vague and hurried. Then came the receipt, crumpled and half hidden in the bottom of her purse. It screamed accusations. A fancy restaurant on the other side of town, a place we haven't been to in years, not since our anniversary before the kids came along. My blood ran cold. "What's this?" I asked, the accusation hanging heavy in the air. "Oh, that," she mumbled, snatching the receipt and shoving it into her pocket. "Just a client meeting that turned into drinks. Work stuff, honey, you wouldn't understand." Her voice held a new edge, defensive and sharp. But the lie was clear in her eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't place. The flimsy explanation did nothing to quell the growing suspicion gnawing at me. Things had changed. Sarah's once carefree mornings now involved meticulous makeup routines, a stark contrast to her usual throw on some mascara and go approach. A new perfume clung to her, a sweet, floral scent that made my stomach churn. It wasn't the familiar lavender that had become synonymous with her. Every detail, every change, fueled the flames of doubt. Sarah, the woman I loved, the woman I shared my life with, was slipping away. But where was she going, and who was she going with? Guilt gnawed at me like a persistent rat. Downloading the phone tracker app felt like a betrayal, a desperate act fueled by a suspicion I couldn't shake. But the unease had become a constant companion, a dark cloud hanging over everything. The app confirmed my worst fears. Friday night, her phone pinged at a bar on Elm Street, the Alibi, a place notorious for its after-work hookups. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum solo in the quiet of the house. Saturday morning, I woke up with a hollow feeling in my gut. Sarah was still asleep, her face peaceful, the image a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. I grabbed my phone, pretending a work call, and snuck out the door. The Alibi was buzzing when I walked in, a cacophony of chatter and laughter. My eyes scanned the crowded room, searching for the flash of blonde hair that would shatter the fragile hope clinging to me. There she was, at a corner booth, laughing with a group of men. None of them looked familiar. Fury, hot and raw, surged through me. I wanted to storm over there, confront her, demand answers. But something held me back. Maybe it was the fear in her eyes when I'd caught her with the lipstick stain, a fleeting fear I couldn't explain. Instead, I melted back into the crowd, unseen, unheard. The image of Sarah, her face lit up with amusement for someone other than me, burned into my memory. The laughter that had once filled our home now echoed in my head, a cruel reminder of the life slipping through my fingers. As I walked away, the question loomed large. Who was this woman I was married to, and what secrets was she hiding? The front door slammed shut behind me, the noise echoing through the empty house like a gunshot. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The image of Sarah, laughing with another man, was branded into my brain, a vivid reminder of the betrayal. I stormed into the living room, the crumpled receipt clutched tightly in my hand. Sarah was there, perched on the couch, a book in her lap, a picture of domestic bliss shattered by my arrival. "Don't even pretend," I spat out, the words tumbling over each other. The bar, Friday night, care to explain? The book clattered to the floor as the color drained from her face. For a horrifying moment, she looked like a stranger, a ghost of the woman I knew. "What are you talking about?" Her voice was shaky, but her eyes held a flicker of defiance. "Don't play dumb, Sarah," I growled, shoving the crumpled receipt in her face. "This receipt, the Alibi. You were there, weren't you?" The defiance crumbled, replaced by a wave of shame. She sank back onto the couch, tears welling up in her eyes. The truth tumbled out in a torrent of words, a tangled mess of emotional neglect and a desperate longing for excitement. Years of unspoken resentment surfaced, years of frustrations that had festered beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. Each accusation felt like a blow, each defense a flimsy shield against the storm of anger and hurt. The night devolved into a shouting match, our voices rising and falling in a chaotic symphony of pain. Words that had been unspoken for years were ripped from our throats, leaving raw wounds in their wake. Hours later, exhausted and drained, we collapsed on opposite sides of the bed. Sleep eluded me, the weight of the fight pressed down on me, suffocating. The familiar comfort of the bed felt alien, cold and unwelcoming. Our 25-year life together, the life we'd built brick by brick, felt like a fragile house of cards, teetering on the edge of collapse. The future stretched before me, uncertain and terrifying. Could we rebuild what had been shattered? Or would the foundation of trust, once so strong, crumble to dust, leaving only the wreckage of our dreams? Sunday bled into existence slow and heavy, the silence in the house thick enough to choke on. We moved around each other like ghosts, the air crackling with unspoken words and shattered trust. Every cough, every rustle of the newspaper felt magnified, a stark reminder of the chasm that had opened between us. Breakfast was a silent affair, coffee and toast consumed without a single glance in each other's direction. The tension hung heavy in the air, a suffocating weight on my chest. Monday morning arrived, a monotonous echo of the broken weekend. Sarah, looking pale and drawn, surprised me by suggesting couples therapy. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest, a fragile butterfly battling the storm of doubt swirling within me. Maybe, maybe it could help, I stammered, the words catching in my throat. The therapist's office was sterile, the beige walls offering no solace. We sat awkwardly on a worn leather couch, pouring out the wreckage of our relationship in measured tones. Her words were clinical, detached, offering tools for communication and reconciliation. A part of me clung to the hope she offered, a lifeline in a sea of despair. But the distrust lingered, a bitter aftertaste in my mouth. Every time Sarah spoke, I searched for a flicker of truth, a hint of the woman I once loved. But all I saw was a stranger, someone who shared my name but harbored secrets I couldn't even begin to fathom. The therapist suggested individual sessions too. Sarah readily agreed, a flicker of remorse, or maybe something else entirely, flitting across her eyes. Over the next few weeks, we became regulars at her office, dutifully attending both couples and individual sessions. But the sessions felt sterile, a forced attempt at CPR on a relationship that might already be dead. The therapist's words bounced off the walls, echoing in the emptiness that had become our marriage. Was this it? Was this all that was left of the life we'd built together? The hollow echo of laughter and whispered promises, replaced by a suffocating silence and a gnawing uncertainty about the future? The therapist's voice droned on about communication styles and healthy conflict resolution, but my mind was elsewhere. It felt like we were discussing the weather on a day a hurricane was about to hit. Suddenly, her words shifted, zeroing in on a specific point. Sometimes, in situations like these, there can be emotional attachments formed outside the marriage. The air in the room seemed to crackle. I stole a glance at Sarah, expecting a denial, a deflection. Instead, she was staring at the floor, her face pale and drawn. A beat of silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then, barely a whisper, Sarah spoke. Yes, there was someone. The world tilted on its axis. The sterile beige walls of the therapist's office seemed to close in on me. My breath hitched, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. An affair. The word hung in the air, a dark accusation. Who? I managed to force the question out, my voice hoarse. Mark, she mumbled, the name barely audible. A colleague from work. Mark. The name jogged my memory. A tall, lanky guy with a nervous chuckle. I vaguely remembered him from a couple of work events someone Sarah had introduced me to in passing. How long? My voice was a low growl, barely containing the storm raging inside me. A few months, she mumbled, her eyes downcast. It had just happened. A few months. The words echoed in my head, each iteration a fresh blow. Months of stolen moments, of lies whispered in the dark. Months of living a double life while I went about my days oblivious, a fool trusting a stranger in my own bed. The therapist, bless her professional heart, tried to steer the conversation back on track, but all I could see was Sarah's face. Guilt was etched there, sure, but something else flickered beneath the surface too. Was it defiance? A hint of justification? The revelation hung heavy in the air, a poisonous cloud obscuring the future. The therapy session blurred into a fog of questions and accusations. The carefully constructed facade of our marriage had crumbled, leaving behind a gaping hole filled with uncertainty and a bitter cocktail of anger and hurt. One thing was clear. The road to reconciliation, if there even was one, would be long and arduous. The trust that had taken years to build was shattered in a heartbeat. Could we ever rebuild it? Or was this the final chapter, the closing line in the story of our lives together? The car ride home from therapy was a silent war zone. The air hung heavy, thick with the unspoken words churning in my gut. Sarah sat beside me, a statue carved from ice, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery. Every mile felt like an eternity, each tick of the clock an accusation hammering against my skull. Reaching the house, I practically leapt out of the car, the need for fresh air, for any space away from her, suffocating me. Inside, the silence pressed down on me, a physical weight on my chest. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stranger, its walls echoing with the ghosts of our shattered life. Sleep was a distant dream that night. I tossed and turned on the couch, the familiar cushions offering no comfort. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle in the house sent a jolt of nervous energy through me. The following days were a blur of activity, a desperate attempt to keep the rising tide of emotions at bay. Lawyers materialized like vultures, circling our carcass of a marriage, their voices a droning monotone as they discussed assets and alimony. Financial discussions, once a mundane part of life, now felt like a grotesque autopsy, dissecting the very foundation of our existence. Sarah sleepwalked through it all, a ghost haunting the halls of our once happy home. The vibrancy that had once sparkled in her eyes was extinguished, replaced by a dull ache of shame. She moved with a robotic efficiency, signing papers, answering questions, but her soul seemed to be a million miles away. The house itself felt like a tomb. Every corner held a memory, a photograph, a piece of furniture, silent witnesses to the love that had bloomed and now withered. Laughter echoed in my head, a cruel reminder of happier times. Now, only the suffocating silence remained, a constant companion in this waking nightmare. The revelation of the affair had ripped the rug from under my world. Everything I thought I knew, everything I thought we had built together, lay in ruins. Distrust gnawed at me like a persistent rat, leaving behind a trail of doubt and despair. Could we salvage anything from the wreckage? Or was this the final act, the curtain falling on the play of our lives? The future stretched before me, a desolate landscape shrouded in uncertainty. The realtor bustled around the living room, her voice chirping about great curb appeal and spacious entertaining areas. I followed her like a zombie, pointing out minor repairs and upgrades we'd made over the years. Each word felt like a nail being hammered into the coffin of our marriage. A couple, young and eager, lingered by the fireplace. The woman's eyes snagged on a framed photo of us on our wedding day, smiles wide and naive. A laugh escaped her lips, light and carefree. The irony of it nearly choked me. The house sold faster than I expected. Standing on the curb on closing day, the moving truck filled with our belongings felt surreal. The new owners, a young family with excited children, buzzed with anticipation as they unlocked the door. We were an afterthought, ghosts fading away from the life we'd built here. 2 separate apartments became our new realities. The silence was deafening. No more shared routines, no clinking of coffee mugs in the morning, no late-night whispers about our day. Just the hollow echo of loneliness bouncing off the bare walls. I threw myself into work, seeking refuge in the familiar grind. Bills piled up, emails demanded attention, deadlines loomed. But the work offered little solace. Sarah's face flashed in my mind during every pause, a constant reminder of the gaping hole in my life. Social media became a minefield. Mutual friends posting pictures of happy families and weekend getaways felt like a personal attack. Their joy seemed to mock my misery. With a few clicks, I unfollowed most of them, retreating further into my self-imposed isolation. The world outside seemed to move on in a blur, oblivious to the earthquake that had shattered my life. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The anger, the hurt, the suffocating sense of betrayal, it all lingered, a festering wound that refused to heal. One night, staring at the blank ceiling of my sterile apartment, a question echoed in the emptiness. Could I ever forgive her? Could we ever rebuild the trust we'd so carelessly destroyed? Or was this truly the end, the final chapter in a love story gone tragically wrong? The answer, as elusive as ever, hung suspended in the darkness. A rap on the door shattered the silence of my apartment, jolting me out of the gloom that had become my constant companion. Warily, I peered through the peephole. It was Mrs. Henderson, the kind-faced elderly lady who lived across the hall from us in the old house. Surprise washed over me. We hadn't spoken since the moving truck had hauled away the last of our belongings. Hesitantly, I opened the door. Mrs. Henderson stood there, a casserole dish and a bottle of wine cradled in her arms. Her eyes, usually twinkling with amusement, were filled with a gentle concern that sent a prickle of warmth down my spine. "Just wanted to check in, dear," she said, her voice soft. "Saw the lights on and thought you could use a home-cooked meal." Before I could stammer out a response, she bustled past me, filling the sterile apartment with the warm aroma of spices and herbs. The unexpected gesture, so simple yet so profound, felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. For hours, we sat at the kitchen table, the casserole forgotten as memories, both happy and sad, tumbled out. Tears flowed freely, mixed with bursts of laughter as we reminisced about late-night barbecues and the time our cat got stuck in the Christmas tree. It wasn't a solution, not a magic fix for the gaping hole in my life. But Mrs. Henderson's visit was a beacon in the darkness, a reminder that I wasn't completely alone in my grief. Slowly, tentatively at first, other friends reached out. Phone calls, hesitant texts, eventually even invitations for coffee or a beer. Their support, though initially awkward, was a comforting anchor in the storm that had become my life. Months bled into one another. The raw pain dulled to a constant ache, a dull throb that never quite went away. But amidst the heartache, tiny glimmers of hope began to flicker. I started running again, pounding the pavement until my legs burned, the endorphins a welcome escape from the relentless thoughts. One day, at the grocery store, I bumped into a former colleague, Mark. After the initial surprise, we fell into conversation, catching up on the years since we'd last spoken. He mentioned a new photography class he was taking, his eyes alight with enthusiasm. The conversation sparked something long dormant within me. Dusting off my old camera, a forgotten relic from a happier time, I signed up for the same class. The click of the shutter, the smell of developing chemicals in the darkroom, the thrill of capturing a perfect shot, all of it brought back a forgotten sense of joy. The class became a refuge. For a few hours each week, I could lose myself in the world of light and shadow, the composition and focus. It wasn't a cure-all, but it was a start, a tiny step towards rebuilding a life shattered by betrayal. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, a flicker of hope danced on the horizon. The official document landed on the table with a dull thud. "Divorce decree," the lawyer announced, his voice devoid of any emotion. Finality slammed into me, a physical blow that knocked the wind out of my lungs. 25 years, reduced to a piece of paper with legalese. The pain was still there, a dull ache that resided deep within me. But beneath it, a strange sense of clarity bloomed. The life I knew might be gone, buried under the rubble of betrayal and heartbreak, but there was still a future out there, waiting to be written. Weeks turned into months, the raw edges of grief slowly smoothing into a dull ache. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found myself staring at Sarah's number in my phone's contact list. My finger hovered over the call button, a mixture of trepidation and a strange sense of purpose warring within me. With a deep breath, I pressed the call. The silence on the other end stretched until Sarah's voice, hesitant and uncertain, filled the receiver. We talked for a while, the conversation stilted at first, then flowing with a newfound honesty. There were no accusations, no angry outbursts. Just two people acknowledging the wreckage of what we once had, the dreams that had turned to dust. A quiet acceptance settled between us, a bridge built tentatively over the chasm that had opened up. Life continued, a slow and steady march forward. I reconnected with old friends, joined a hiking group, explored the city with a newfound sense of curiosity. The world, once viewed through a filter of anger and hurt, began to regain its vibrancy. There were still moments, of course, when the past ambushed me, a familiar song on the radio, a scent that triggered a memory. The sadness would wash over me, a bittersweet reminder of what I'd lost. But the anger had faded, replaced by I'm home, guys. Turns out I could come home early today after all. I also brought back some of your favorite cake, Sherry. Why are you guys ignoring me all the time? Who the hell do you think you are, ignoring the person who provides everything you need to survive? My name is Allison Kobayashi, and I'm a 30-year-old housewife. At the time of this particular story, I was living together with my husband, Gideon, and my daughter, Sherry, who was in the first grade. Our family was very close, and we were happy every day. We went on trips together on weekends, and we always had dinner together, whether it was at home or somewhere outside on special occasions. Tragically, though, it didn't take long for our happy family to be destroyed. It seemingly all happened in the blink of an eye. One day, Sherry came home from school and suddenly shot herself in her room. This was definitely not like her, because every day she would normally exclaim, "I'm home," in that lustrous, energetic voice of hers, and we'd have a small snack together. But the fact that she went into her room without even saying anything at all made me suspect something must be wrong. I rushed to my daughter's room, but when I attempted to open the door, I discovered she'd locked it. My suspicions were pretty much confirmed by then, and convinced she needed someone to talk to, I knocked on the door and called out her name. "Sherry, are you in there, sweetheart? What's going on? Did something happen at school?" I asked her, and she didn't respond, but I could hear her crying in her room. I came to believe this was the result of some kind of trouble at school. I kept on knocking on her door, calling to her as gently and compassionately as I could, hoping to get some kind of response. I know it sounds like I'm being annoyingly persistent, but you can't blame a mother worrying about her own daughter, who could be crying alone in her room. A few minutes later, she came out of her room and she really was crying, and boy, oh boy, was she crying a lot. Her cheeks were completely drenched and warm to the touch, and snot was running out of her nose onto her lips. I feared the worst, and I almost started to cry myself, but I forced myself to keep my cool, hugged her, and listened to her story as she began to speak. Then, Sherry made a shocking statement. "Daddy was hugging a friend of yours, Mommy, in the parking lot of the big shop with all the food. Many people could see them. I saw them, but I don't know if they saw me." I was so surprised that I asked her for some more details. "My friend Tommy's mom picked me up from school today. Don't worry, I told her thank you many times, Mommy. And on the way home, we went past the big shop with all the vegetables and big boxes outside. I loved looking at all the colors, and I looked out the window of the car to look at the vegetables, and I saw Daddy and your friend together, Mommy. I wanted to open the window and say hello to them, but then they started hugging." She started to bawl again. Her sadness was so genuine and so pure that it twisted and wrenched my heart. "Did Tommy's mommy see them too?" "No, I don't think she saw them. I was about to cry as soon as I knew it was Daddy, but I held it in, Mommy. Way to go, Sherry. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you, and I'm very sorry you feel so sad. So, according to my daughter's testimony, Gideon was having an affair with one of my friends from Sherry's school. Since I was completely convinced our family was close and happy, I never dreamed he would ever have an affair, and I felt nothing but shame and apology that Sherry had seen the affair with her own eyes. I couldn't do anything but hug her. All I could do in that moment was to hug her, try my best to console her, apologize to her again and again and again. Eventually, I started to cry too. After a short while, Sherry calmed down, and I was thinking about starting to cook dinner when I received a message from Gideon. The message said he was going to come home late. I had one look at my phone and froze dead still. Sherry noticed and called out to me, "Mommy, what's wrong?" "Oh, nothing, honey. Daddy's just going to be home late." Daddy's a big liar. I loved you so much, Daddy. Now I hate you so much. You hurt Mommy, and you made me very sad. I hate you. Sherry was utterly and completely furious, but the expression on her face was pure sadness. How about we play a little game, sweetie? Let's play secret game. We're a team against Daddy, okay? Here are the rules. First, we don't tell Daddy about him hugging another woman. And second, Mommy will go do some detective work, and you won't worry about anything. Do you think we can win the game, darling? I know that telling a child not to worry about anything isn't exactly the most ideal thing to do, but what else could I say, especially in that situation? That's all I could think of that was reassuring. We slept in the same bed that night, hugging each other and comforting each other. Gideon seemed to have come home later on. He didn't call out to us, nor did he say anything to us at all. He apparently went to work early the next day, because we never saw each other that morning. The next morning, I saw a now more recovered Sherry off to school, and then I ran to a trusted detective agency. I asked them to investigate a love affair against my husband, and they told me it would take about a month before they could give me any substantial results. If there was evidence that confirmed Gideon was having an affair, they promised to contact me before they whipped up the report. Thereafter, some time passed before I heard from them again. Not so long as an entire month, but it was certainly more than 2 weeks. Being together with my husband for that long, knowing that he was actively being unfaithful to his family, was nothing but agony. It was like running a marathon, knowing that I was heading straight into a thunderstorm. And when they would contact me, claiming they now had firm evidence to confirm a suspected affair, and I, in turn, would have to face up to whom he was having an affair with, I despised the notion that someone else would find about the affair because my husband was with one of my friends from Sherry's school. Even I hated having to know who the woman was, and the fact that it was Gideon who was persuading her to go out with him made me absolutely sick. I don't think I ever felt this uncomfortable and disgusted towards another human being. Sherry and I were so disgusted with Gideon that we played the secret game like true professionals. We did our best not to talk to him at all. Sherry actually stopped approaching her father altogether. Is she going through a bit of a rebellious period lately? It's a bit early, isn't it? Gideon never had a clue in the world and kept on saying carefree things like that. I was just so sick and tired of his existence. One day, while leading such a stressful life, I was contacted by the detective agency. I was both happy and scared to find out all the bad things my husband had done. The staff at the detective agency reminded me that this was only a draft, an interim, and that it wasn't to be taken too seriously just yet. I received some photographs in my email. By that point, I knew for sure that he really was cheating on me. And the photographs were all taken at the same supermarket where Sherry had first caught sight of them being unfaithful. I couldn't understand why they were hugging each other in the supermarket so often. I couldn't help but feel sick to my stomach once again. It felt worse than my morning sickness, which was already quite the doozy. And when I saw the woman in the photographs, I gawked at the screen, stunned and speechless. The woman, whom he was having an affair with, was none other than my best friend, Anna. Anna often came over to our house, and Sherry liked her very much, so much so that she considered her an aunt. Whenever she came over, Sherry ran up to her and asked her to play, and then they would have lots of fun together. Sherry's favorite thing to do with her Auntie Anna was going to theme parks together. Of all the women that could have been having the affair with my husband, she was literally the last person I was expecting. I just couldn't believe what I saw, and the fact that Sherry was the first to see the crime itself. Oh, Sherry darling, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Needless to say, I was downright furious with Gideon. I was able to find out about the current status of the affair through the interim report that the detective agency, but they informed me that it would take a little more time to prepare a report eligible for the court. Therefore, I didn't question Gideon about the affair, and I was left with no other choice but to live with him as if nothing was happening. I could not forgive my husband for cheating on me, but I thought that it was not good for me to be a single parent for Sherry's sake. However, she was asking me questions about her father's affair, and as days went by, it became increasingly difficult to keep everything from her. So eventually, I decided to tell her. She may still be in the first grade, but she was the one who first had a clear understanding of what was going on. She first uncovered the affair after all. I hate Daddy for cheating on you, Mommy. He hurt you, and he hurt me too. I hate him. I want to be with you, Mommy. Please don't make me stay with Daddy. As she said that, she hugged me very tightly. I hugged her back tightly too. I could no longer live with the husband who betrayed us, and we can no longer live together as a family. Even if I stay at home like this, it won't be good for our future as a married couple, nor will have a positive impact on Sherry's future. So right then, I set my mind on getting a divorce. From that day, it would take about another month before the report from the detective agency arrived, but Sherry and I actively began to avoid any form of contact with Gideon. We didn't have any conversations with him. We didn't invite him out on any family trips on the weekends, and we never asked how his days at work were. Both of us began to see Gideon as something that wasn't human, more like an abomination that was going to be terminated very soon. I made an interesting new discovery that night, that someone you loved once upon a time can appear as something completely aberrant when you really can't accept their existence anymore. Gideon started coming home at different times every day. There were days when he was very busy and worked late. Some days he came home on time. Of course, my husband didn't know that I was investigating his affair, so I had to treat him as usual, but I couldn't have a conversation with him, and nor could Sherry, because of how much we despised him after what he did. Even during the meals, day after day, conversation was zilch, and often, not even a single word was uttered. One day, I received a message from Gideon saying that he had to work late, but he came home earlier than I expected. My darling Sherry and I were having a nice talk over dinner, but when Gideon came home all of a sudden, our conversation came to an instant halt. I actually felt the air in the room get colder by a couple degrees. I'm home, guys. Turns out I could come home early today after all. I also brought back some of your favorite cake, Sherry. Why the hell are you guys ignoring me all the time? By this point, he was talking to us pretty loudly, but of course, we kept on ignoring him. Where the hell is my food? He was getting furious, but of course, we couldn't care less and paid no attention to his exhilarating tantrum. Why? Because he said he had to work late, so I didn't prepare anything for him? In any case, I was sure that by I could come home early today meant that his girlfriend couldn't make it to their little romantic soiree together. Who the hell do you think you are, ignoring the person who provides everything you need to survive? As he shouted these words, he slammed his fist onto the table. The shockwave made the table bounce into the air for a split second, and as a result, a couple dishes fell off. The dishes shattered against the wooden floor, spilling a bunch of food all over the place and making the floor what appeared to be vomit of a drunken crackhead just outside a smoky downtown jazz bar. And still, we ignored him. We ignored him for so long that he actually got scared. Wait. Wait a minute. Hang on. I'm not invisible, am I? I almost laughed when he said this as he began to place his hands all around his body. After I confirmed that he wasn't see-through, he still went on endeavoring to get something out of us, but of course, we ignored him. You're mad because I didn't come home on time? I'm sorry, honey. I guess I should just get my own dinner. I'll just leave the cake on the kitchen counter, okay? He's saying such things, still feeling around all over his body, trying to reconfirm that he really wasn't invisible, but I never wavered in ignoring him. No matter how many times he could check, there's no damn way he'd be transparent. And that's only because we were simply ignoring him, treating him as though he didn't exist. Hey, Sherry, sweetie, how about going to the amusement park next weekend? I'm thinking about buying some tickets. It's been a long time we last went to that place, hasn't it? He was trying so hard to get her attention, but she was being such a good girl. Gideon went on talking, trying to get our attention back, and frankly, I wondered how in the world he could talk to us when we were both considering him dead to us. Hey, guys. I'm begging you, answer me. Why are you two treating me as if I don't even exist? Did I do something wrong? Come on, guys. Tell me, please. Am I on my way to heaven? Maybe you can't even see me for some reason. Maybe I'm something beyond invisible. Maybe I don't even exist anymore. Or maybe I have some kind of superpower. I could be the leader of the Justice League right now. I can't tell you how many times I've had to hold back my laughter because he's just been talking about hilarious nonsense to himself whilst being ignored for so long. Perhaps he really got scared because of how much we weren't paying attention to him because he bolted out of the house. I am still alive, right? Is the mysterious statement that he left behind. Sherry and I laughed. Daddy thought he was a ghost. He looked so funny. He almost made me laugh, darling. Great job ignoring him. I think you deserve a piece of that cake. We got up from the table laughing, and we laughed and laughed as we washed our dishes and helped ourselves to some slice of cake. He doesn't think we know that he's cheating on us. He merely got frightened and went out to see if he was still alive. Perhaps he assumed that if he had tried to stay at home, he would eventually think he really had become a spirit of sorts. By the time 2 weeks had passed since my husband ran from the house, my daughter and I were living happily in a traitor-free environment without anyone to suspect of foul play and without source of negative emotions whatsoever. And then the papers arrived from the detective agency. I paid a visit to the lawyer's office and asked for a lawyer to help us in a court case against Gideon. After we made sure that all the evidence was in place with a professional's help, we began the divorce proceedings quickly. The service of the lawyers were absolutely fantastic and things went very smoothly. All in one day they prepared the documents, walked me through the legal procedure, and even guided me as I signed them right then and there. It was sent to my husband and Anna, and they informed me that it would arrive to their doorstep in 2 or 3 days. Since I didn't know where my husband was at the moment, we made sure the documents would arrive at his job and at his parents' house. 2 days after we sent the content certificate, Anna suddenly contacted me. The content certified letter specifically stated the receiver not to contact the sender directly, but perhaps she failed to notice it. I didn't want to answer the phone, but I thought that Sherry would be concerned after a while if it kept ringing, so I decided to answer. When I did, it came across way too loud and clear through the phone that she was pissed off beyond all recognition. What the hell are you doing demanding alimony from me, Allison? You're out of your mind. You're crazy. You're bonkers. Why would you ever think I wouldn't sue you? Because your husband forced himself on me. I have no obligation to pay you anything. I actually want alimony as much as you do. She didn't seem to be cooperative regarding the demands for alimony, but I kept a calm mind as I talked to her. I mean, perhaps he did force himself onto you, but you still gave voluntary consent to have a romantic relationship with him. The simple fact that you accepted his proposal, forceful or not, makes you just as guilty as he. And additionally, the fact that you've been in a relationship for so long makes everything crystal clear. This was never a one-way street. You also had feelings for him, which is why you never backed out of the affair, because it was too late, and that's why you're getting demands to pay alimony. You betrayed my daughter's trust, Anna. Do you have any idea how much pain she's been going through? He told me that if I refused him, he would destroy my relationship with you. Ironic, isn't it? Because it's destroyed anyway. If you truly felt like he was backing you into a corner, allowing you no way out, you should have talked to me about it. You've been actively having an affair with him for 10 whole years. That excuse is not going to convince anyone. How do you know about that? That furious Anna was now nowhere to be seen. I could definitely hear her voice shaking now. Yes, you heard right. Gideon and Anna had actively been having an affair for 10 whole years, and there's firm evidence supporting the conclusion. When the detective agency was doing their investigation, I'd also asked them to find out how long he'd been having the affair. To do so, they had to investigate his belongings. While my husband was away for work one day, a staff member from the detective agency was scheduled to visit my home. They asked me to lead them to my husband's room, and I helped with the search. After perhaps 20 minutes, we found his old computer, which he had replaced in his closet. After repairing the computer and recovering the data, it was discovered that the computer contained emails sent between Gideon and Anna. The exchange went on for years, with the oldest recorded message sent by Anna, no less, on June 6, 2013, and that was 10 years ago. When I told Anna all of this, she started to bawl on the phone. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for hurting you and for hurting darling Sherry. I promise I'll make sure you never see me again. I'll keep apologizing until you forgive me, and I'll do whatever you say. Please, I'm begging you. Please don't ask me to pay alimony. In her voice, I could literally hear her getting down on her knees as she begged me. I finally had the chance to raise my voice to my best friend, who had less common sense than a drowned codfish, by pleading me to have merciful and hold off demanding alimony for her crime. Apologize to me for the rest of your life? Don't ever contact me or have anything to do with me or my daughter ever again. You destroyed our family, and now what? You want me to spare poor little Anna of her heinous deed and decide not to demand compensation? Don't you dare do anything other than what I'm about to ask you. First, stay out of our damn lives, and second, take responsibility for what you've done and pay well for it. Yelehea. I couldn't believe she was ever my friend, but then she starts to tell me why she doesn't want me to demand alimony from her. Last year, both of my parents were killed in a car accident, leaving my baby brother, who's 17 now, without any guardian to support him. His grandparents were retired in Australia, and I'm literally all he is left, and I want him to go to college. I'm working every day to save up for his school fees, and I can't afford to pay alimony. I know apologizing won't be of any use, and I know you'll never forgive me, but I simply can't afford to pay you alimony without sacrificing my brother's future. Please, Allison. We've been best friends for so long. We did so many things together in school, particularly matching costumes and stuff like that, and we had a lot of fun, didn't we? Who would have thought we'd also have matching husbands? And after that, the same stupid bullshit of begging for my forgiveness. I was sick of her voice. I was sick of her begging. I was sick of her. You were cheating on my husband and destroyed our happy family, and now that your own family is in trouble, you won't dare take responsibility. You're an adult, for crying out loud. Freaking take responsibility for what you've done. I will apologize for the rest of my life, and I will do whatever it takes. Just anything but paying alimony, please. Please, please. Even after everything I'd said, she still wouldn't back down. I was just about to vomit hearing her whiny, pathetic voice crying the whole time, so I said one last thing before hanging up the phone. I know that for those who engage in an unfaithful affair, should the victim request it, the perpetrators must be responsible and pay alimony accordingly. This is common knowledge, and yet you never try to stop the affair, so the responsibility is yours to bear. I expect you to face up to it. I never heard from her again after that. Soon after that call, I got another call, this time from my husband. My husband was exactly like Anna. He told me stupid bullshit about how she forced him to go out with her and that he couldn't say no, and so on and so forth. Blah, blah, blah. I never spoke a word and just hung up during his sentence. I was also feeling a little under the weather and fell asleep on the couch. While I was asleep, Sherry had apparently called my parents from my phone, and I explained the situation to them. By the time I woke up, Sherry and my parents had cooked for me and were watching me sleep. Sherry was snoozing too, with that cute little stuffed bunny doll she loved. My parents explained what their granddaughter did, and I cried because my daughter had grown up so much. We were spending such a wonderful time together as a family when all of a sudden, out of the blue, Gideon, who had lost so much weight since I last saw him, unlocked the front door and trudged inside. I don't know how long it had been since we had seen each other, but he looked so different. None of us knew who he was, and because he had changed so much, we saw him as a suspicious person. The first time Sherry saw him, she got so scared and started to cry. Sherry, sweetie, it's me, your daddy. Calling me a prowler is cruel. So cruel. He looked like he was about to cry too. Then he started talking, his voice cracking and his legs shaking. I saw the content certificate. I'm so sorry. I swear on my life I will never do this again. I just don't want a divorce. That's all I want to talk about. I know you don't love me anymore, and I know I can't bring you to love me again, but I want to see my darling Sherry grow up as much as you do, Allison. He was sobbing by this point, but it's not taking any effect on me. I'm sorry. I can't believe you anymore. Not only have you lost my love, you've lost my trust forever. I just can't anymore. Please, please, please. My husband was on his knees. My father spoke up. I suppose you understand the gravity of what you've done, son. I demand you stay away from my daughter and granddaughter. They mean more to me than life itself, and I won't have any scummy bastard trying to ruin their happiness. His voice was terrifying. Gideon went a few shades paler and tried to run away out the front door, but he turned around once more and looked at Sherry, who was wiping her eyes and sniffing snot from her lips. Sherry, my dearest. You need your daddy, right? You want your daddy to stay, right? He was actually trying to appeal to her, but then Sherry finished him off. Who is this old man, Mommy? I don't want him in my house. Gideon then left the house in tears. After that, the divorce was finalized through my lawyers. Sherry and I moved back into my parents' house. The school district was the same, so fortunately, my daughter's environment didn't change much. My husband couldn't afford to pay the rent for the big apartment anymore, and after selling it, he moved into a dirt cheap flat somewhere on the outskirts of the city. At work, word somehow got out that he had divorced his wife because of an affair. As a result, all the female employees lost their trust in him, and they all stopped talking to him. Gideon became increasingly lonely in the company. His reputation eventually became one as an unfaithful, untrustworthy employee, and thus, getting promoted to greatness was now a dream of the internally condemned. His salary never went up, and his superiors never gave him any challenging work or projects to handle. It seems Gideon doesn't consider his job to be very rewarding anymore, and now his personal and professional life both seem to be in limbo. As for Anna, she had had to earn money for her baby brother, who was apparently at the top of his school for his studies. He showed a lot of potential for a scholarship, and due to his parents passing in a car accident, Anna was responsible for providing the money that paid for her brother's tuition and other miscellaneous school fees. But now, she has to pay alimony for what she did. She simply didn't have enough, so she changed her job and now she is working nonstop. Eventually, her brother found out about her affair and now he won't talk to her anymore. Just pay me the money and I'll be fine. I really despise an unfaithful, dirty woman like you, Anna. I scorn you, is what he told her before he went away to university somewhere in a rural area. Anna was left with her own misery, paying for her brother's school and paying me the alimony, never getting a chance to have anything to do with her darling brother again. As for Sherry and I, we are now living very happily in her grandparents' home. I've started a new job myself, and although I'm in a new, unfamiliar environment, I'm gonna do my best to make enough money for my daughter's bright future. Sherry's seen some traumatic things in life at such an early age, but ever since she started spending more time with her angelic grandparents, she's getting more energetic and happy with every passing day. From now on, I'm going to do everything in my power to protect her from negative experiences and make sure that she lives the happy life